Welcome back to Service Micro Talks, where we explore the AIOps value path, and we're going to dive into the technologies, strategies, and real-world experiences shaping up modern service and operations management. Today's episode is all about auto remediation. This is episode 7, one of the most critical and the most challenging parts of AIOps. I'm joined by two fantastic guests today, Tony Burks, my co-host from Solutions Engineering, and John Thomas, AVP of Product.
Thanks, Sam. Great to be back.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so before we dive in, Tony, as our returning co-host, can I ask you to just give listeners a quick recap of our last episode to help frame today's discussion?
Absolutely. Last time, we discussed the evolution of AIOps and how organizations are moving from reactive operations toward a more autonomous and proactive operation, and of course, how to power that with AI and back-end automation as well. One of the biggest themes is automated remediation, right? The ability to achieve end-to-end incident handling with little to no human involvement. And we discussed kind of how to get to a future state where we detect incidents automatically. We make sure we get to the root cause of those incidents reliably and accurately. AI needs to be able to identify those without hallucinations and without hesitation. And then how those agentic systems can then take that action autonomously without our interaction and maybe even without our knowledge until after the fact, of course, and then validates that those changes have occurred and have indeed solved the problem, right? So without all of the manual triage or swivel chair, as a lot of people call it, without any of the escalation pieces or approvals processes that have to go through, and in an effort to get us towards a much more swiftly changing environment and be adaptable to that. And that's a major shift from traditional operational models. But we also talked about something a little more important, and that's that most organizations can't or won't jump straight into full automation overnight, right? The journey's got to be intentional, controlled, and built on trust.
That's a fantastic summary. Thank you for that, Tony. John, when customers hear zero human involvement, there's often excitement, but also there's concern. Let's park that thought when we come back after the short break, where we can carry on.
Looking to get more from your BMC Helix investment? Take your skills to the next level with BMC Helix Education. Whether you're just getting started or building advanced expertise, our learning paths provide a structured route to success. Explore role-based learning paths, expert-led courses, certifications, and skills assessments, all designed to help you deepen your product knowledge, validate your expertise, and become truly proficient with BMC Helix. Start learning today and invest in your future.
So, John, welcome back. What's the first thing customers usually ask when exploring auto remediation?
Yeah, so this is a really interesting topic that's occurring right now, this idea of auto remediation. And I think there's a couple of things to think about as first off, many customers are coming onto this not because they want to, not because it's a nice to have, but because it's actually becoming a must have. And one of the areas that we're seeing right now that's currently developing is the need around something like Mythos. So the ability to find by this AI model thousands of vulnerabilities in just a matter of a weekend, a large percentage of those being exploitable, and then organizations having to change the way that they're operating in order to respond to that. And it pushes the point that you just can't always scale your model by throwing more people at the problem. And sometimes automation is the solution. So if you have to do that, and if that's being pushed, or whether or not you need to drive efficiencies within your organization, then the next thing is to think about, like, how do we create a smarter starting point? I've been doing this for a long time. I remember earlier in my career where I actually wrote IT process automation workflows or runbook automation workflows. And I remember that oftentimes we would write these things, and the starting point was maybe an event, something that has come into our monitoring system. And what I'm really excited about right now, and I think why there's this opportunity for automation, is because now we can actually have a better starting point. Instead of just sending a bunch of events that might be symptoms, we now can use AI to get to more of an intelligent root cause, so that we can be increasing our likelihood that we're acting on the thing that will actually make a difference. So that's a really good thing. But then when people say, okay, now that I've got this better starting point, I've got this need to go in and I have to do something about it, how do we get to this level of trust as we get into the process? And what I've seen our customers look at is, first off, starting with the things that are non-impactful. Triage can be a very valuable activity that can be fully automated with very low risk to your systems, whether you're collecting logs or you're running trace routes or pings or different things to collect the amount of disk space that's in use on a server, and doing that on behalf of the user, so you don't have your employees going out and performing these actions manually. The next thing that they can do is they can start to do things like human in the loop. So where AI is acting as part of your triage group, your war room, if you call it, and you're actually providing recommendations on what automations can be used. And then those are being actively triggered by a human looking at the response and then deciding what is the next action to do. And I think you can build on that after you get a high level of confidence that the recommendation was in fact the correct recommendation, to start to move into something that's more of a full remediation style. So a very exciting and interesting time for automation in the space right now. And yeah, we're seeing a lot of great early successes in some of our customers.
Excellent. So Tony, that idea of learning gradually feels critical. How should organizations think about testing auto remediation step by step?
Yeah, great question. That's kind of the old adage, right? Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Coming from similar backgrounds, it was always the case where we wanted to slow down first when people wanted to automate large swaths of multi-step processes, and we wanted to bring those back into like JT mentioned, right? We wanted to bring them back into things like triage and restarting easy services and cleaning temporary storage, all of the standard prelim steps that most organizations have written in run books somewhere in their knowledge management and knowledge modules, right? So when we start with those low risk scenarios and we start with repeatable steps, we can break those apart, make sure which ones are necessary and unavoidable things, and we can always make sure that the agent pieces that are working with us in our war rooms are performing those steps up front before we even start the conversation with humans in the loop. Taking steps like that to make sure that the steps that we're doing are effective and important and needed is how we then build those back up to where the automations are clean, less prone to error, things like that. And then that builds in and steps up into approvals and how we react automatically to surprise monitoring scenarios and God forbid DRs or rollback scenarios where we have to actually fail over to different things. All of those steps get more and more advanced, and as we make sure that we've got a process in place on the less risky and less problem-prone solutions, they can grow into those things pretty easily. One of the key things, though, that customers need to understand is that you're not trying to eliminate humans in the loop immediately by any stretch, right? And that's always the concern is we want to make sure that we've got eyes on this thing. We want to make sure it's running and doing exactly what we expect and need and want it to do. You're just trying to reduce their initial repetitive manual efforts, and that is a piece that can grow and grow and grow as that trust that JT was talking about will build. And yes, right, mistakes will happen doing this. The other adage that comes in here, where when we automate things, all we sometimes do is fail faster. That is also a risk on some of these things. So as you step through, keep a sharp eye on the overall picture and what we're actually trying to feed to work towards, and that'll keep you protected from making sure that you don't roll out things that don't do us any good or don't do us any favors. What matters is creating feedback loops as well, right? So we make sure that everybody is quick to say yes or no, this was good, this was bad, and that our agents and other pieces can adapt to those feedback loops quickly alongside us.
Well, that naturally leads us into validation as well. So John, once automation executes an action, how do customers confirm the results are correct?
It's a great question, Sam. And it's one of the things that's really key to being able to move quickly is the ability to automatically do the validation. And I see that a lot of customers, when they start out, focus on just the remediation actions themselves. But you're right, that validation is the thing that truly allows them to move faster without having to bring humans back in. We know one of the things that often requires a lot of delays and change approvals that have to occur is that the teams that manage the services on the servers that are being modified have to take time out of their schedules to come and do the validation once the change is completed. And so when you think about doing some of these things in an auto-remediated fashion at any time of day, the idea of being on call 24/7, 365 in order to do the validation is untenable. It's not something, it's a failed starting point. So being able to provide the validation, and I think one of the things to look at is the service teams know the best way to identify whether or not their service is running. For one example, we have a customer that runs Selenium scripts that are provided by the service teams to make sure that the service is online and responding in the way that they expect it to run. So you can do the same thing that they use for testing. You can run that as part of your end-to-end process to ensure that your remediation has, in fact, resolved the issue that's out there. The other thing that's really important for us when we talk about closed loop is ensuring that we're documenting the things that are being done. So whether we're creating incidents or if we're making modifications, updating changes, we also see that as part of the closed loop process to ensure that there's auditability of the things that occurred, even though they're occurring based off of an automation.
Excellent. And of course, leadership teams always ask, how do I know I'm actually getting value from this? So Tony, how do customers typically measure the benefits of auto remediation?
Yeah, that is a bear often, right? So the value usually, it becomes visible quickly when they're implemented correctly. But one of the biggest problems that I saw as an automation engineer was that after that value becomes visible quickly, it then fades just as quickly. And that usually, for us, it was great, right? Because it meant you wrote a good automation. Any good automation fades into the background and quietly does its job without anybody kind of noticing it. So one of the biggest things that we wanted to do to make sure that that didn't happen for two reasons, which I'll get into, but one of the biggest things we wanted to do was kind of centralize and create like a broker of that automation, right? And when you do that, you centralize both the reason the automation is happening and the tracking of the automation's efficacy, right? So that we can now make that visible no matter what, whether it's the scripts JT was referring to or any of the other thousands of automation tools that are out there or homegrown scripts. All of those things need to be managed by a central source, and that source needs to obviously be part of the automatic flow, right? So when we see that, we run into either A, it's been running quietly for so long and providing value for so long that it's hard to quantify, or B, it's a band-aid to a problem that we actually have been covering up for so long that we don't actually know how to fix. So in order to do both of those things, we want to provide like a centralized place to be able to manage those scripts, not necessarily create them or maybe even run them, but at least manage them and call out to them and have them available to us. But what customers often see when they do this correctly, right? The easiest pieces are they've got lowered MTTRs, which everyone is always chasing. They've got fewer escalations, fewer times spent on these war rooms, smaller war rooms when they're more targeted to have people on them, the right people to fix the problem, less time spent in them, obviously less time in the middle of the night when nobody likes being paged, right? Things like that. And of course, faster response to most overall problems in general, which of course turns into better uptime. There's a huge cultural benefit. There's a huge morale benefit. These are kind of the unquantifiable pieces. You're not going to see a lot of things like that in an output chart or a graph to management. But keeping the people happy is no small feat. And it definitely helps with that as well.
So that's kind of
a little pause there. Sorry, hang on.
Okay.
I want to make sure I covered the last part. I forgot the page, but so we'll cut this little piece out. Just for those organizations. No, we can leave all that. Okay, go ahead, Sam. Sorry.
Okay. So that's an interesting challenge. So move too fast and create operational risk, move too slowly and potentially miss the value entirely. John, what do customers typically see when automation is implemented too aggressively or even incorrectly?
Yeah, this is really important. The good has to be greater than the potential harm. Like it has to be worth the risk associated with building out automation. It has to be worth the effort that's put into the automation. And so what people see when these things go wrong is unreliable is number one. So if the triggers that are supposed to trigger the automation don't connect correctly, you end up having all of these times that maybe you're completely missing the action. If you get used to the idea that an automation is going to pick up, you think about that 24/7, 365, the benefit of automation being always on and always available. But if it becomes unreliable, now you have people with expectations of some amount of normalcy being disrupted at all hours of their day and their life. So unreliable is one of the first things that we see, and people have to spend more time. A lot of times, if the data is bad that's being used to trigger the decision making, then the automation is going to be run unreliably. The other thing is automation failures. And you might be biting off more than you can chew. You might be trying to do things that are very, very complicated and trying to get those done perfectly. That would be even tough for a human to do successfully. And so what we really want to recommend to folks is to take an incremental approach, to start with the things that aren't going to be as impactful, to make sure that you have the right data coming into it, and to make sure that you're spending the time to incrementally build on top of it and not try to go after the hardest use cases first, but instead to build up, and as your maturity grows, to make sure that you're doing it in a way that avoids that loss of trust that can occur if you do it poorly.
That's a great distinction. We're just coming up to a short break.
You'll find all of our upcoming webinars in the Helix community, and don't forget to bookmark our Helix webinars page for the latest sessions and on-demand content. You can also join the BMC Helix Customer Success Group to discover upcoming events, webinars and podcasts. And here's your chance to shine. If you'd like to become a guest presenter on one of our webinars or podcasts and share your expertise with the global Helix community, we'd love to hear from you. Simply email samantha@helixops.ai today. We'll see you at the next Connect with Helix webinar.
Tony, before we wrap up, let's talk about one of the biggest risks organizations face, automating bad processes. What happens if companies fail to evaluate their operational processes before introducing automation?
Yeah, that's where many automation projects struggle and even fail, right? That's exactly what we were talking about in the prior section. If our processes are inconsistent, if they're manual, if they're poorly documented, if they're too dependent on tribal knowledge, we'll go into those issues, automate them, and simply scale those problems to where they're causing more problems and they're doing it faster. Instead of improving efficiency, you accelerate bad decisions, you increase outages, you introduce instability and distrust in the process, and you create more operational complexity. JT touched on that with his, right? So when you're introducing more requirements for checks, your operational complexity is going through the roof because of the automation process. That's a failed experiment. You definitely are not gaining more than it took you to put into the project. So evaluate the workflow first, take out the unnecessary steps, and this is the key point that I want to make sure that is clear here as well. When going from manual workflows or runbooks to an automation, many of the steps will come out just by the nature of the fact that they're manual. I don't need to validate X, Y, and Z in the same way that I would if I were doing them manually, because it's now an automated process and it's required to have this certain input, X, Y, Z, et cetera, right? So a lot of those steps will change just by the nature of the fact that we're automating it. So you've got to break it apart, you've got to simplify it, you got to standardize it, and then you've got to automate it. So automation should amplify operational excellence, not chaos.
That's a fantastic takeaway. Thank you for that, Tony. So today we discussed what auto remediation really means, how organizations can safely adopt autonomous operations, why testing and validation is essential, how customers measure value, the risks of moving too fast or indeed too slowly, and why process maturity matters before scaling automation. Tony and John, thank you very much for today's discussion.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. And thank you, JT. This was great. I really liked having you on here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is just such an exciting time in automation. I think what we've got with AI and with agentic, just the opportunity that has right now to take automation to a level that we only dreamed in the past is super exciting. And I'm really excited by what our customers are starting to do with this. And so great topic and good timing. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, everyone listening for Service Micro Talks. Be sure to join us next time as we continue exploring the future of AIOps, automation and intelligent service operations. Tony and John, obviously, I can't thank you enough. And also, if you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and join us next time as we continue exploring the AIOps value path, and we will be looking at capacity optimization.